Hello everybody, welcome to Blue Marble Science. This pair of mental midgets tried to take on gravity in Cavendish, and they failed in epic fashion. Warning, severe facial and monitor damage alert is in effect. Get out those oven mitts, push the monitors back out of punching range, and let's light this dumpster fire and have some fun. It looks like the Cavendish experiment has Nathan and Anthony in an absolute utter panic. Well, I'll tell you what, get used to it, boys. It's going to get worse. Listen to this nonsense.
I know, but I'm too excited. I've got to share this with you. Hillbilly Blue Balls. He's recreated the Cavendish experiment. That's not an experiment. Measuring a force. It's not a force anymore. And obviously, he loves Cavendish because he spent a lot of time. And to be fair, his build is really cool. I mean, he's got the kind of man cave that most people would die for. Loads of machinery in there. His garage is bigger than my bloody house. But anyway, this is what he said about his Cavendish experiment repetition. He says. Where we go. He says, okay, so now for a quick Cavendish update. We, of course, have already seen undeniable proof of mass attracting mass. It works 100% of the time, and that qualitative result, I wonder where he got that phrase from, is beyond question. But of course, the object of all of this isn't simply to show that mass attracts mass. That is a given. So he's claiming to debunk Einstein. The object is to accurately measure the universal gravitational constants using a close replica of the equipment originally used by Cavendish. And then he starts to describe it all. So from Hillbilly Blue Ball's perspective, he thinks that his mass attracting mass is a given and it works 100% of the time. I guess he hasn't realized that it was debunked in World War I. Shout out to Einstein and his theory of general relativity.
The sleeping warrior who was just talking, I call him Sloppy. And Nathan Oakley, I call him Slappy, won't go into the reason for that, have been desperately trying to make this case for a long time now. They want you to think that Einstein superseded Newton. So I thought, well, is that true? Did Einstein really supersede Newton? And who better to ask than Einstein? Let no one suppose, however, that the mighty work of Newton can really be superseded by this or any other theory. His great and lucid ideas will retain their unique significance for all time as the foundation of our whole modern conceptual structure in the sphere of natural philosophy. Albert Einstein, The London Times, November 28th, 1919. Will you guys just shut up?
Can I lay down a challenge for him?
Creepy levels of delusion here.
Hold on.
Really creepy.
Before we get to the personal attack.
So you're planning a personal attack, Nathan? Why does that not surprise me?
So he says, quote, it works 100% of the time.
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to see a calculation for that mass attracting mass using Einstein's field equations.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Slappy. You should take Einstein's field equations and calculate the attraction between the masses in my Cavendish experiment, and then I can test it and tell you if you got the right answer or not. Personally, I would be just as happy if you could tell us what the internal angles of an equilateral triangle are.
100% of the time means it'll
I'd
work.
like to see the independent variable being manipulated, like I did, to prove the cause of the effect of the accelerating egg. I'd like to see the thing that he manipulated, because otherwise he's just calculating with correlation. That's all it is.
Oh, I've got
You're
that
never
written
going to
down.
see it.
I've got that screenshotted. You can talk amongst yourselves for a second. I'll go and grab my iPad, and he was in my chat discussing it, and I asked him what his independent and dependent variable are. Do you want me to clarify them for you?
Yeah, go on.
Give me a minute.
He's going to say, I just watched it. Can you imagine if I just watched... Yeah, Meekin, are you there, Meekin?
I'm back now. I just missed all that. Bloody shot rang.
Oh,
Sorry.
I think Nathan's back.
What?
Yeah, while Nathan's not. Adam,
Okay,
do you
do you wanna
agree
hear
with
it?
me that when the egg is sat in that neutral position where it's neither one nor the other, it's in the middle? Do you agree that that's undergoing the effects of Brownie Emotion, right?
This is Brownie Emotion, Anthony. This is what makes an ink drop slowly spread out in a glass of water. Your egg is not being pushed around by Brownie Emotion, you knucklehead.
Brownie Emotion is oh god, man, that's a step back in the past. Brownie Emotion is particulate action used as an analogy to gas behaviour, as I remember from back in my school days. But it's just tiny little smoke particles colliding, but it's analogous to gas behaviour.
Yeah, that's what but it also applies to, because gases and liquids are considered to be fluids. It applies to fluids as well, because the fluids are never technically stationary; they're always technically moving. Do you agree?
Yeah. They're free to flow over each other. They move over each other.
Yeah. Here's the thing: if the egg is undergoing Brownian motion because of the contact or the collisions between the pressured particles that are flowing in the liquid, then that is omnidirectional by definition. What omnidirectional force will be applied against the egg? And they're all going to say buoyancy, but that's directional, so it can't be buoyancy, and that's based on gravity, which is not a force, even though they think of it as a force. So it can't be that, but the egg's undergoing Brownian motion. What is that force that's causing the Brownian motion? And the answer is pressure. But they can't tell us that because they don't want it to be pressure. Because as I add more mass, that increases the density, which creates more pressure below the egg because salt's more dense than the egg. And that is where the upthrust comes from, that they miscalculate and misappropriate from buoyancy. But we know it's caused by pressure. So they can't admit that Brownian motion acting on the egg, the omnidirectional nature of Brownian motion, is caused by pressure. Because when I add more mass, that increases the pressure below. They can't admit it.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
Can I ask you a question, Anthony?
Sure.
Can you have fluid pressure without a container?
No, it'd fall all over the place, wouldn't it? It'd seek its lowest immediate volume or place based on its environment. So it would be silly. Couldn't do my egg test without the glass. That'd be ridiculous.
You
Okay,
can't
so
really technically have any kind of pressure, so to speak, without, or some kind of liquid or fluid pressure without a container.
No, it's like having the upside down glass on the underside of the shelf and filling it with helium, because obviously helium's more dense than the medium. It's less dense than the medium it's in, so it'll want to rise. To stop it from filling that void above you, which it's wanting to go into, it is going to need a container of some kind. To think that you could keep that gas in this area without containment is just ridiculous.
Okay, hold on. I've tried 3 times. Hold on, please. So I've got it up on screen now. So I'll just give you his claimed IV and DV. Which one do you want first, DV or IV?
DV, please. What was his DV?
His dependent variable is measured force of attraction.
Measured force of attraction. Oh, right, okay. So wouldn't that be his hypothesis, though? He claims that there is a measured force of attraction.
He's giving that as his dependent variable. His begging the question fallacy that he's trying to prove with the experiment is actually his claimed dependent variable.
Okay, so now I want to know, how did he prove it by manipulating said presumed cause?
Do you want to know what his presumed cause is? His independent variable is distance between 2 masses. So according to him, if distance between 2 masses, then measured force of attraction.
So we're back to the correlative calculations fallacy, isn't it? So basically, Einstein and Newton both calculated correlative effects. I also calculated a correlative effect. That makes 3 calculative correlative effects that are relative to things called acceleration on Earth. The only difference is Newton and Einstein both stopped and fell short with a demonstration or experiment, whereas I continued on and I demonstrated by manipulating my presumed cause that an acceleration would occur. Newton and Einstein stopped at them calculations. Oops.
Oh my God. Did you just try to equate yourself with Newton and Einstein, Anthony? Good Lord, boy. You couldn't win a foot race in the Special Olympics.
So while it settles down, it takes a little bit of time. Okay, that's coming in at 212 parts per million, tap water. Don't know what that means, it's just a number. It could be unicorn farts, it's just a number.
Oh yeah, Sloppy, that was some serious science you undertook there, buddy. And I must have missed the part with the calculations. I think the only thing I've ever seen you do is equate 0 to 1 somehow or the other. That was maybe the most embarrassing thing I've ever watched in my life, Anthony. You might as well have claimed that waving your hand over the top of the glass is what caused the egg to move. Tell you what, let's skip forward and listen to a little exchange that went on between Nathan and the rumpus.
Yes,
Nathan,
Rumpus.
do you genuinely not understand the independent and dependent variables in the Cavendish experiment,
Here
despite
we
the fact
go
that
again.
they are so
Understand
incredibly
again.
simple?
No, we don't understand what you want us to understand. We don't stand
Okay,
under
I know
nothing
you're
you say.
stupid, but I mean, even but the variables in the Cavendish experiment are so simple. The fact that you don't, well, you claim you don't agree with them, either means you're so stupid you don't
What was
understand
the
some very
naturally
simple
observed
things, or you're trying to
Guys,
deceive your
guys,
No, no,
audience.
just
let him
what
get
is
his,
the
let him get his
hypothesis? How about that?
preemptive ad homs in. So you have
So
had the independent variable detailed when you were put to task by QE, and he wrote down what you claimed was the independent variable, and you gave it as mass.
yeah, well, you can change, you can decide.
All right, just a yes will do, because now I'll point out that independent means on its own. That would be the independent variable. Well, according to Hillbilly Blue Balls, his independent variable is distance. Not mass, but distance.
You can choose one of three.
Can you? Is that what independent means? Oh, wow, I've got a totally different understanding of what independent means.
I know, because you're stupid.
Oh, really? Does independent mean a choice of three?
Yes.
No, it doesn't, you absolute moron.
Listen.
No, I won't listen. I'll tell you that you're a thicko. If you think independent, that means on its own, alone, means a choice of three.
Causes. There are three causes.
Then they're not independent.
Newton, there are three independent.
Three independent, what, like three Lone Rangers?
There are three.
Three Lone Rangers, right?
There are three.
Lone Rangers and three independent variables. Let's get something absolutely clear. Rumpus tells us that the independent variable in Cavendish is mass. Hillbilly Blue Balls, on the other hand,
You keep calling me Hillbilly Blue Balls, and they're going to be calling you Nathan No Balls.
tells us that it's distance. Well, they're two different things. Not independent in the slightest.
Independent variables in Newton's universe.
Variables? What do you mean variables? If it's independent, it's on its own, you absolute clown.
In an experiment, you fix two of them to make them controlled variables, leaving you with one remaining independent variable.
And that would be your presumed cause. Well, that then is singular, on its own, alone, your presumed cause of the effect. Well, if the effect is being caused by a singular independent variable, then it's not something else. And you and Hillbilly Blue Balls have got totally different independent variables, making a mockery of your claimed science.
No Balls, you're an absolute idiot. You just claim that nothing can ever have more than one cause. Do you realize how stupid that is? What is wrong with you?
Choose to fix two of the masses, and that leaves you with one independent variable in the experiment, because you've got the two other ones become controlled variables. And so he changed the distance, but he...
Well, they're different things. So you've got mass and distance. Well, they're two things. That's not independent. You're just thick.
Clearly, Nathan Oakley doesn't understand the scientific method, so let's see if we can help him out. But before we do that, let me remind you that Cavendish did not do this to try to prove gravity existed. That's a given. We know what it is, and we know what causes it. Cavendish was literally determining the density of the Earth, but using the same experiment and all of the same information and data collected, you can compute a value for the universal gravitational constant. So this is the way it goes if you want to use the experiment as a method of proving that mass attracts mass. That is the observed phenomenon. The hypothesis is two masses will attract each other with a force that obeys Newton's law of gravity. In other words, that force will be proportional to the product of the masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between their centers. I just listed three variables. We'll call those system variables: distance and the magnitude of two masses. Now this happens all the time in physics and actual science. Not so much when you're just playing with an egg and a glass of salt water. When we have a situation like this, what we do is simply fix two of those variables and call them control variables. We don't change them. We only change the third one. For me, The easiest thing to change is the distance between the masses. So that is my independent variable. The magnitude of the two masses are the control variables, and the dependent variable is going to be the measured force of attraction that provides a value for the universal gravitational constant. So let's see what happens when we actually run this experiment. Here's a preliminary test I ran a couple of days ago. The torsion balance was allowed to sit overnight and stabilize, and it was showing a steady reading of about 242 millimeters. Now you'll see it move a little bit right at first because just my presence out there setting up the time lapse is enough to disturb it. But about 45 minutes into this, I actually moved the weights from the west position to the east position. And when I do that, you'll see a very dramatic change in the behavior of this thing. So those radical oscillations are what happens when we move the weights from one side to the other side. And you'll see over a period of time the oscillations slowly subside, and eventually it's going to come to a point of rest at about 201 or 201.5 millimeters. So what does that mean in terms of our calculations? This is a spreadsheet that incorporates the formula we just derived for calculating the gravitational constant. Previously, I had measured the oscillation period of that balance to be 1079.9 seconds. Now, using the two resting points from that test a couple of days ago, I calculate the gravitational constant to be 6.629 times 10 to the minus 11th. That's within about 0.5% of the accepted value. Have we demonstrated a force of attraction between two masses? You betcha. And stay tuned, there's a lot more testing to come. Hey, thanks for watching. And remember, when we say how stupid can you be, that isn't a challenge, that's a question. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Shout out to the Patreons and the PayPals that have helped us out with Cavendish. And with that, I'll catch you guys on the next one.